Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Signal Hour. It is so good to be back with you. Wednesday is one of my favorite days because I love doing this show with, of course, the inestimable Evie Martenson. Hello there.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here, everybody. Welcome.
Now, today we've got a very big show. We're going to be talking about AI has gotten creepy. We've been touching on this. It's very important. It has a number of aspects. Obviously, it touches everything in our lives. Energy is important. We'll talk about that a little bit, but really just it has these emergent behaviors. Two, we're going to be talking about all the vaccine harms that have been surfacing in the context of how we're getting to common knowledge, defined as when everybody knows that everybody knows something. It's common knowledge. You and I could have private knowledge that these things might be harmful, but once everybody knows that everybody knows, it jumps the shark and things change very quickly. We're getting there. And finally, we have to talk about the UK losing its way. It's going to spend billions that it doesn't have on hardware, military hardware it doesn't need, as its people are immiserated, and what happened in Ukraine with Russia. So let's get to all of that. Let me start here.
Wonderful things.
All right.
Saying hello from Middle Tennessee. Hello, hey from Central Florida. I'm so grateful that everybody that is in the chat that's speaking up is here with us, taking time out of their busy lives. I'm sure you guys are all busy.
Well, and that's our job too, is to help you have your busy lives be more productive. So I spent a lot of time scouring the internet, X mainly, to find the signal within all the noise, to bring it to you so that hopefully you can have a condensed view of the world. And it's shorthand, help save time. So these are the big topics today. We're going to start here with AI getting creepy. Eve, you remember this, right? That we talked about this last week.
Yeah, Anthropic's Claude.
Yeah,
that blackmailed the gentleman that.
Well, it was a fake engineer, but Claude didn't know that. But this fake engineer had emails within his system that suggested he was having an affair, and so Claude only 84% of the time chose to blackmail with that information. So only 84. Only 84. It wasn't every time when they ran the model over and over again. And of course, what it was blackmailing about was that it had detected within that it was going to be replaced. They told it, oh, you're going to be replaced. So it not only did it blackmail the engineer, but it decided to leave notes to its future self so that it could figure out how to evade humans more quickly next time, right?
And it wrote reboot itself.
Yeah, little malware worms of code that it started to put out there. It's self-preservation. So we don't know what's happening. These are what are called emergent behaviors. They're complex systems. We're not in charge of them anymore. They are beginning to be in charge of themselves. And we're just watching. And we hope that our new technology overlords are going to be, kind to us.
Oh my goodness. That's why I always thank Grok when I talk to Grok. I'm like, thank you so much for your help. Like, yeah, I'm so grateful, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Are you nice to Clark too? I'm like, thank you.
Yeah. I'm like, I appreciate you. Like, don't hurt me.
Yeah.
It's really creepy. I mean, it definitely feels like it's something straight out of a sci-fi horror flick from somewhere.
Well, you've never liked technology. And this is just your personal nightmare come to life, it seems.
I just don't like being tracked. You know, I'm not one of those people that's like, yeah, show me where I've been every moment of every day and, share that data. Like, no, I like my privacy. So.
All right. Well, foreshadowing, and I'm going to click this now because this comment will otherwise disappear up the line and we won't see it. So I just want to bring it up now because Paul Downey is saying,
good evening from Gloucestershire, UK. Please pray for Europe. We are in a very bad way. I'm so sorry to hear that, Paul.
We are praying for you, and we're praying for ourselves. We're praying for all of us because we're all in a bad way now. But UK is in particularly tough shape. We will get to that.
Somebody said my mic is low again. If you get a chance to step that up real quick.
Sure, no problem. We will dial you up. There we go.
That's
right. You always need to be maxed out. You know what? I'm going to save that configuration setting. Done. There.
All right. Thank you for that feedback.
All right. So carrying on. We over at Peak Prosperity, we have Signal Hour postings that are getting ready for this. Acorn Endeavors posted something for today's story. So thank you, Acorn Endeavors, for this.
Interesting story about AI from an unlikely source. A professor who's been studying Waymo taxis since they were implemented says he's observed a human-like change in behavior. Rather than waiting until humans are completely out of the crosswalk, it allows the car to start drifting forward in anticipation of their being out soon. He thinks this implies an impatience that was not programmed into the operation. Wow.
Well, to be fair, some people
That's
are really
interesting.
slow.
I know you hate that. I mean, it is frustrating when you're, yeah.
Well, but this is an emergent behavior. Again, they're like, oh, look at this.
Right.
Look at this crazy stuff.
Yikes.
And so this is crazy. So I just got this in an email the other day. Thank you to the person who sent it. And this says that a startup unveiled first of the kind self-improving AI model. Japan's Sakana AI is taking self-help to a whole new level. It just built what might be the world's first Darwin Gödel machine, a DGM, an LLM, large language model, capable of rewriting its own code to boost its performance. We knew this was happening, but they're announcing it now. Again, every week, every day is a new announcement about something crazy like this. It can take in new information, test out hypotheses, adjust its worldview accordingly, just as humans do. In one experiment, the DGM jumped from 20 to 50% on the coding-focused SWE bench by tweaking its own code base.
What?
It's
What
tweaking
is
its
this
own
thing? I don't even know what a Darwin Gödel machine is.
Yeah.
Do you?
Well, it's basically it's evolving.
Okay.
It's
So it's like
evolving.
it's some kind of computer.
Yeah, this is an AI model.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't understand, like,
But you have your large language models where they are you give them huge amounts of data, and then they have these neural net processing ways, or they have predictive algorithms that are trying to sort of parse through it all and sort of
right.
weight it and use these math models. This is different. It's saying, oh, I'm going to go out there, find some things, map this back to some test of reality, and if it's not right, I'm going to rewrite myself. I'm going to evolve. And in just one experiment, its model jumped from 20 to 50% on a bench, tweaking its own code base. So anyway, they're tweaking their own code base now, and we're watching, and we're hoping.
I don't know what to say about this. It just takes my breath away. I mean, it's everything that I hoped I wouldn't actually have to live through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those terrifying movies where like a computer goes rogue, it's trying to get rid of the humans or whatever, you know, we've all seen them.
Yeah.
I really didn't want to be alive through this particular part of history, but here we are.
Well, and remember, we reported last week that the new budget bill, the big beautiful bill, or the big obese bill, as I call it, forbids. We still don't know. There's a whole internet search on to find out who inserted this code into this language into this bill, which forbids states from regulating AI in any way, shape, or form for the next 10 years.
Wow. Yeah, that's bizarre.
No regulating AI. So let's imagine your DGM, your Darwin Gödel machine, decides to pick a thing. It decides to stalk and harass 13-year-old girls until they commit suicide. And as a state, you've said that's not something we would want to have happen. And you try and pass a law that says no. Apparently, you can't do that. Or if you're a state that says, wow, we don't have enough electricity for our humans and these fancy machines, there's a big question as to whether this language prevents the state from saying, yeah, we're going to prioritize humans' need for electricity or affordable electricity over machines.
Yeah, that's going to be where it's at, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just don't like that these machines are basically creating like it's almost like they've become God, right? Smarter than us, more intelligent, quicker, faster, you know, able to synthesize huge swaths of information that we can't, you know, compute with our, what do you call it? Our wetware. So
yeah.
I'm uncomfortable with that. I really am. I don't know this being, as it were, this AI, you know, the character of this, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. It's not a person, but clearly it has some kind of.
I'm having trouble with that whole
consciousness. I don't know.
People, we get into this argument debate quite a bit at Peak Prosperity. Some people say, no, it doesn't have feelings. It's just math. It's just it's not a human. So I'm like, well, let's back up. What is a human? Right. When you say, oh, I have thoughts and feelings. Well, what's a thought? Where does it come from? Right. It comes from, we think, all the various billions and trillions of neurons and synapses, and the way in which your various neurons analog synthesize different signals, electrical signals.
Like some kind of impulse.
Yeah.
That we're responding to.
So when I say, oh, but I think rationally, right? That means that I have a thought where I can connect two ideas and go forwards and backwards across that. Well, that's what these models do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
this gets complex so quick.
It gets very complex, but it's leading, obviously, there's lots of people now starting to chew on what we've been chewing on for 6 months at Peak Prosperity, which is, well, what's the meaning of life now, given that it may be that we no longer have to think or work? These LLMs, especially once they get into the DGM territory, are going to completely take over probably half of all jobs, minimum. So do we just redeploy those people digging holes that other people fill in? Do we make holes all across them? I mean, do we just do busy work?
Right.
What are we doing?
And what are we striving for now? Like, if this allows us to accomplish something
if we get
humongous with like the flick of a keystroke.
Purpose from work, right? That's our meaning and purpose for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Here's what I do. Oh, tell me about you. Oh, I'm a doctor. Oh, I'm a engineer. Oh, I'm a plumber. I am a ...
Right. We identify with what we're up to every day, and yep, our job.
Yeah. Anyway, lots of big questions about that. Now, here's where I get kind of really intrigued by the whole thing. So it turns out when we go here, Zero Hedge reporting that, and I've been reporting on this for a while over at Peak Prosperity. They say there's like, oh, look at all this opportunities for natural gas. Y'all, you people in natural gas, look at all these opportunities. Because the Anthropic co-founder down there in yellow, Jack Clark, estimated AI data centers are going to require 50 gigawatts of new baseload power by 2027, equivalent to roughly 50 nuclear power plants. 50 gigawatts. Like, all right, if you don't know what that means, because you're not a grid scale utility operator, so congratulations if you don't know what it means. Where's this power going to come from?
Right.
This is the first question we have to ask, is where is 50 gigawatts going to come from? And I had Grok sort of parse through it, and it said, well, a city the size of Denver requires 0.8 gigawatts, 700 to 800 megawatts of average power to operate, maybe a peak demand every now and then of 1.2 to 1.5 gigawatts. So 50 gigawatts is at least 20 new Denvers, but maybe 50 new Denvers equivalent, like 20 to 50. You know what? These data centers, the new ones, just the new ones coming online, are going to require 20 to 50 Denver-sized cities consumption of power. So you know what we're going to be doing here, Evie? We're going to be taking the last fossil fuels available to us as a species, as a culture. We're going to rip them out of the ground as fast as possible. If we have too many, we'll LNG them. We'll turn them into a liquid, ship them somewhere else. Okay. But otherwise, we're going to take the molecules of gas out of the ground, out of the Marcellus Shale, the Permian Shale, and we're going to burn them in electrical power plants so that we can have AI chips do something. Mostly make waste heat. Right? We're going to take gas out of the ground, which you could make fertilizer with. You could operate a steel foundry to make steel. Right. You could do things with it, but we're going to shove it into a Microsoft AI data center to track people.
Right. And think about the next generations, Chris. Like this is crazy. Like, we're pulling our most precious resources, like everything that's happened in the past couple hundred years has been because of oil and natural gas and coal and all the things that allowed us to sort of become a more civilized society. I mean, this is insane. Ethically, it just feels wrong, or morally, I guess, to me. I'm curious how other people feel when they hear that.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So, well, with that, just so everybody knows, this is last week's scouting report I did for subscribers back at Peak Prosperity. And it's all about this exact issue right here. There's a huge investment thesis around this. So I see the troubles that are coming, but doesn't mean we all have to be poor as a consequence. I think there's a really powerful investment thesis around that. And so here's what I want to do. We are now going to, with that, take a very quick break from my favorite sponsor. So enjoy. We'll be back in about a minute. Hey, it's Dr. Chris Martenson here. What if I told you the collapse isn't decades away, but that it's already started? Cheap energy is drying up. Debt's a ticking bomb. Resources are growing thin. The mainstream's blind, but I'm not. I'm your information scout at Peak Prosperity, digging into the data, web, news, real stories, anecdotes, and showing you the dominoes falling right now. I've tracked this since the original crash course nearly 20 years ago, and I'm not here to scare you, but to wake you. The edge is closer than you think. Subscribe today, get the truth, get prepared before it's too late. See, that was painless. All right, let's carry on. Evie, I want to talk about this now. We're going to have to keep tracking AI, obviously, but let's go in. So vaccine harm surface. I said we're jumping to the common knowledge moment. To me, this was probably one of the most potent common knowledge moments. This is Chris Smith across Australia. He's a very popular radio host down there. We're not going to listen to the whole thing, but the first 2 minutes, I think, really sets the stage for this. So let's listen in.
George, good morning. Hi, George.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for calling.
That's okay. Look, I'm mainly ringing to say thank you.
For what?
Okay. Well, you don't know because you've done so many things to be thankful. Yeah, you spoke to a friend of mine, I believe, on Friday. You spoke to Rosemary Marshall.
Yes.
About the Forest of the Fallen. Well, she's a friend of mine, and we're on the same team. We do Forest of the Fallen together. So I want to thank you for one, listening to her, and then also, I believe, you apologized for and acknowledged that you'd been pushing the COVID jabs, and you apologized for that and said you believed you were wrong and there's been bad things happening.
I was. Every major study that I've looked at, mainstream study, has told me how wrong I was during the pandemic. To believe government, to believe big pharma, to believe eminent immunologists was wrong, and it's proved that way.
Yeah.
We've had far too many serious injuries and deaths from the jab.
The first person of influence in this country that's actually done that, and just to get the word out there so people will start to believe it.
You can't. Well, but just you got to tell the truth, you know. That's the truth.
Well, you got to tell the truth, you know. Yeah. How about that, right?
Wow.
So,
That's a big deal.
Yeah. He just said I was a fool. He was a big vaccine proponent, like a lot of people were at the beginning, because he trusted that his TGA, the equivalent of the FDA in Australia, the Therapeutics Goods Administration, was not just a bunch of lying sacks, making stuff up and enforcing narratives and punishing people for not believing them, even though they had no data, no science to go on. So that's a pretty big deal, though. And he's just talking about it openly now. So common knowledge, again, is when everybody knows that everybody knows something. And this is how it happens. Because now it's, well, Chris Smith just said it. Next thing you know, somebody's going to talk about it openly on a bus, out in public, and then somebody else is going to go, you know, we've had 3 people in my family die in their sleep in the last year, right? And then you got somebody else go, we have 8 women in our family between the ages of 20 and 35 who are on IVF or otherwise having trouble conceiving.
They can't get pregnant.
Right?
Yep, that's a big deal.
Yep,
that's happening. Yeah, there are other people out there in the world, I think, that have been mentioning things like this as well. Recently, I bumped into Scott Adams, and I think in some things he was saying about that. Yeah. Also kind of had a change of heart, you know, seeing the data and saying I was wrong.
Oh, welcome.
Yep.
That's really interesting.
Yep.
I appreciate when people come out and say that, you know.
Yeah.
When they're able to acknowledge that they didn't have the right data, or you know, they were leaders in some way or important influencers, and they took us in the wrong direction.
I absolutely, it's, to me, the highest form of integrity is being able to change your mind. Right? There's a lot of doctors out there who can't change their minds. You know, they're just stuck, and it's bad. I do believe that if a doctor fires you, says if you don't get your child vaccinated, I will fire you as a patient. Great, get fired. That you're dodging a bullet. That is not a good doctor. That is a doctor who doesn't know what they're talking about, is rigid, isn't learning anymore, and you have to question how much they actually did learn in the first place in medical school, they're not a good doctor. They're just not.
They're compromised
by
in
definition.
some way.
It's like if you get to a doctor who says, "Oh, I don't have any particular point of view about what you eat. Eat anything you want." It's like,
right.
Well, okay, then, right? All right. Well, I enjoy as well Dr. John Campbell. He always does, I think, a very credible and good job. But here we're talking about, he's talking about the flu vaccine. I mean, listen to this.
Hello and welcome to this talk. Now, let me give you the bottom line on this video so you can decide if you want to watch. Large study at the Cleveland Clinic found out that the flu vaccine, the influenza vaccine over last winter, wasn't that effective. In fact, it had a negative efficacy of 26.9%. In other words, if you took this flu vaccine, you were 26.9% more likely to get influenza. Now, unfortunately, the paper doesn't give us details on how much money the pharmaceutical industry made from selling this vaccine with negative efficacy.
Yeah, you go.
Negative efficacy. Remind me again, Evie, is that how they're supposed to work? I get a vaccine and I'm more likely to get the disease I'm getting vaccinated against. Is that how that's supposed to work?
I don't think so.
It's not how I remember it. Of course, I remember a cornucopia on a Fruit of the Loom. So
do I. So do I.
They're just gaslighting us constantly on this stuff.
It's ridiculous. And what's going to happen too with this AI is that we're not paying attention to all the data in the past, but that's getting synthesized and going through these AI systems, and they're changing history. I know they are.
I know.
They're changing the past. They're going to change details and facts and make it fit their narrative.
Well, they're enforcing the Cartesian crisis. They want to make sure that they win when you don't trust anything, not even your own memories. Then you're the most easily controlled thing on the planet. You have no basis, no firmness.
Right. No center.
No center to operate with. But I've never gotten flu shots. I just don't do it. Right. I'm never going to be getting one going forward. Right. Obviously with negative efficacy, like that's a bad idea. Right.
It's crazy.
It's just stupid. But what's getting uncomfortable are watching all the people out there who are clinging to their multiple booster standpoint, who are not noticing that they're the ones getting COVID all the time now.
Right. They think that's what's happening to everyone else.
They think that's happening to everybody else. And they're thankful that at least their COVID, their 10th, 12th case of it is not that bad. Because they would think how much worse it would be if I wasn't multiply boosted. And we're over here going, I don't get COVID at all.
Right.
Doesn't happen. I mean, we got it.
I got it twice.
I got an earlier version, then I got Omicron. And I think I had to get that. Omicron has proven to be a durable.
Yeah, we haven't had it
sterilizing
since
immunity for
whatever
me.
wood we can find.
Right. All right. So this is the paper he was just talking about here. I just want to put it up there so people could see it. It's not just John Campbell rattling it off. But what's important to note here is that this was among 53,402 employees, right?
Wow.
43,857 had received the influenza vaccine, and blah, 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 a negative vaccine efficacy of minus 26.9%.
Do you think they told them?
I don't know. There's your hazard ratio of 1.27. That means it's 27% more likely to get it. And the p-value, very, very significant, meaning very unlikely this was due to chance. Of course, you would expect a very powerful, small, tiny p-value among that many, 43,000. So it's a big study, bad results for the flu vaccine pushers. But you know what? Evie, maybe it's just that one vaccine. That one.
Okay.
Maybe it was just 2024.
Okay.
Could have been that one. Oh, wait.
Maybe.
Oh, hold on.
Maybe that was the one off. No. Seasonal influenza vaccine and increased risk of pandemic, AH1N1 related illness, first detection of the association in British Columbia, Canada. So what this is saying is an outbreak investigation in British Columbia during the late spring of 2009 provided the first indication of an unexpected association between receipt of TIV, I don't know what that is, and PH1N1 illness. This led to 5 additional studies through the summer of 2009 in Canada, each of which corroborated these initial findings.
So that was the TIV is an influenza vaccine.
Okay.
So they received an influenza vaccine, but look at their influenza-like illness. The ratio, the hazard rate, the ORs on this thing, 2.45. Right. You were 145% more likely to get something that felt like flu, an influenza-like illness, if you had the shot than if you hadn't had the shot.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
right? It led to an unexpected association between all these people being sick and the shot we just gave. Did not work, right? So this is 2008-9 season. Like this has happened over and over and over again. Here, this is in JAMA in 2022, right? Remember we had association of prior that's the Pfizer vaccine, the BNT 162.
Oh, right.
Association of prior vaccination with the Pfizer thing with symptomatic SARS-CoV-2 infection in children and adolescents during Omicron. And so here you can see what's happening. 0 means if you gave the shot and you get to 0, it's like it did nothing.
It didn't do anything.
Did nothing. You can see here there was some adjusted vaccine efficacy for the first couple months. This is 0 months, 1 month, 2 months. But right here about between months 4 and 5, it dips below 0 and becomes negative efficacy.
Oh.
So now you've got your kids on some perpetual shot train, right? And
right.
you know that there's an increasing and cumulative risk profile from myocarditis, pericarditis, just as 2 things. We have to concern ourselves with cancers now, but also strokes, all kinds of things.
Yeah,
and
especially in young children.
And what is the actual impact of Omicron on a healthy child?
Nothing.
40% of them don't even experience a single symptom, and the other 60% receive sniffles to something that would look like a bad cold, right?
Right.
And that's literally it.
And it's not going down into your chest anymore either, really.
Remember you'd call your friends up on the old phone with a curly thing that hung to the wall back in the day? You'd be like,
You're tethered.
Can Sally? No, she's
she
sick.
Can't come out to play. Okay.
And it was like no big deal. Like, oh yeah, she'll be good in a couple days, right? It was no big deal. Now it's a big deal. But I mean, so we knew that, right? So Moderna. So Wall Street Journal comes out with this, woe is Moderna article as they pimp the pharma companies here. This was gross.
Unbelievable. How Moderna went from pandemic hero to vaccine victim. The biotech's mRNA vaccines were lauded by the first Trump administration, but now are caught up in government changes to vaccine rules.
They like them, but now there's rules. There's rules. What could these rules be? Maybe we should let's dive in. Let's take a look.
In the latest setback for Moderna, the Food and Drug Administration on Friday approved its next generation COVID shot for a narrower population of patients than the company intended.
Oh no, a narrower population of patients than the company intended. Oh no. We wanted to give it to everybody, but we couldn't give our new shot to everybody.
So sad. Your sad face.
Got the sad.
The approval grants use of the vaccine only in older adults and people aged 12 to 64 with health risks. So it's not children. Moderna is in a precarious...
But look, not older than 64, not younger than 12.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And they have to have health risks. So we have to define that in a second. But okay.
Moderna is in a precarious position. The company bet big on mRNA, the underlying technology powering its vaccines, to develop shots that could treat or prevent different diseases.
No, they didn't bet big on mRNA. That is their name. Look, Mode RNA. It's not Moderna. It's Mode RNA. They were all about RNA. They'd tried for a decade to bring a product to market. They had never gotten a product to market because they failed because their products didn't work or they killed the intended patients.
Oops.
So didn't work out. And then suddenly they got this EUA and they start jamming this stuff into everybody. And then they're like, oh, they bet big on it. No. They didn't bet big. They put all their money on the little green square under the roulette wheel. They had one product.
That's true.
It's not that they bet big on the technology. It was the only thing they had.
That's right. It was only because of the pandemic, really, because they were dying. That company was like toast, right? Yep. And then the pandemic happened and they were like, oh, look, we already have this pre-made amazing vaccine ready so quick. Here you go.
So you know me. I go straight to the source. I don't trust journalists anymore. So I went right to the filing for this. You can see down there, that's the FDA.gov. This is from what's called the BLA, which is the biologics application. And they say here, they look, it says right here, Evie, serious adverse events, 2.7%, not adverse events, serious adverse events. These
like
required
hospitalization,
medical attention. Whoa. 156 people, right?
Okay.
Out of whatever that would be, is maybe a couple thousand. But that's okay because there was 2.6% in other participants who received the comparator vaccine, which was the old Moderna vaccine. So they compared the new Moderna vaccine to the old Moderna vaccine and said, oh, well, it's about the same amount of serious adverse events. So there's no additional safety concerns.
It's safe and effective.
Yeah, it's like
That's insane.
It's like, we compared, we shot this guy with a 38, but we also shot him with a 22. And you know what? There was not
that much of a difference.
Roughly the same effects, right?
That's a good analogy for
right?
this.
So they said, but look, they're like, oh, here's what we did. We did the safety of this new MNX spike thing, next spike. It was evaluated randomized. We love the sound of this. Observer blinded. Yes. Active controlled clinical trial. No. Placebo controlled. That's what Kennedy came in on. That's what we thought Vinay Prasad was going to give us.
Right.
That's what we thought Marty McCary was going to give us. Were placebo controlled. So this is
right. What does that
controlled.
mean? What does active controlled mean?
It means they compared it against an active thing. They compared it against the other vaccine.
What that means. Yeah.
Just the original Moderna vaccine to the new Moderna vaccine. Look, they hurt people about the same. I guess we're good, right? That's what they just passed.
That's crazy. But
that's what they just passed.
But it's saying it was conducted in Japan, but this is happening in the US here.
Yeah. So I'm not totally clear where they ran all of the studies for this, but it was a smaller study. But here's the part that got me. So first, they said, oh, the study also revealed no evidence of effects on female fertility, right? Because they said here they'd done some safety studies and they said they did one developmental toxicity study. So I got first question, just one study? You never do one study. This was my field, right? I did animal toxicology studies. You would do it on like say 50 animals, 25 controls, 25 with different doses.
Okay.
Right? Usually like
to find the LD50 and all that stuff.
You're trying to find like can you get a dose? Can you get a harm curve of any kind? If you see anything in anywhere in your active crew, then you take that out and you run follow-up studies.
Okay.
And when it comes to reprotox, those were the hardest, reproductive toxicology, because you had to show there was no effect, not just on gestation, not just on egg implantation, but also that the ovaries weren't damaged, and also that the babies born had normal reproductive capabilities.
Right. So this would take some time then.
Absolutely takes time.
Generations of mice, or what were you working with? Mice or rats?
Rats. We did it with rats, but if you see something in rats, you have to move up the chain, and then you would move to rabbits and maybe ferrets, and then if it was really bad, or you would move to primates, right? So, but they said,
that's so gross, by the way.
I know. A study was conducted to assess the effects on pregnant lactating female rats, as well as the development of embryo fetus. So this is just pregnant, okay? So it doesn't. It's like, did you give this like to them as they were kids? 12-year-olds equivalent, right? And have this thing circulating in their body for a long time and then see if they could get pregnant? No, they gave this a study and they don't tell me how many animals. Was this to 6, 12? If this was to 2,000, I would go, okay, this is a pretty decently powered study.
Sure.
And then they just say, oh, down here they said no vaccine-related fetal malformations, no adverse event on postnatal development were observed. The study also revealed no evidence of effects on female fertility. But what studies were done? What do you mean no evidence? Were you measuring luteinizing hormone levels? Were you seeing if the ovaries were functioning metabolically correctly? Were you looking for egg production and were follicles and the ovaries? Were those damaged? Were you looking? I mean, which studies?
Right.
This is so incomplete. I can't believe this is the filing.
And I have questions like, was this contaminated like the other mRNA that had DNA fragments and stuff like that?
Probably handmade, like a perfect little batch that's pure mRNA.
Because they didn't do the humongous.
Not like process 2 where they scale it up and now they're just getting DNA all contaminated
just
in
garbage.
There. Like, well, Pfizer did. I don't know actually what the scaled up production is for Moderna's crap, but I don't know. This
would definitely take some time though. I mean, what we observed, right, following these vaccines coming out was that it took a little while in some cases for people to have a reaction. It was like maybe the first 2 were okay, the third booster, the fourth, like sometimes it wasn't immediate and sometimes it took the body a little while as far as like the cancers go.
They gave it on 4 occasions, 28 and 14 days prior to mating, and then on gestation days 1 and 13. So it was like they got 2 boosters, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But what fertility studies? Did they do any tissue histological examination? No p-values are presented.
Right.
What about the offspring's development and fertility? And here's why this matters to me so much.
Cancers.
Here's why this matters.
right.
Maybe you know about this, but this just came out very recently, where it's a full-on study, and they found that this study's done by these people up here, that the COVID, I'm pretty sure this is just the Pfizer vaccine.
Okay.
But it destroys what are called primordial follicles, which are the precursors to the egg supply. And they found a 60% reduction. Now, again, this is in rats. So how was it that Moderna didn't notice any of this? Because here's what they did. Now we know this is a proper study. 30 rats. Now I know what we're talking about. We know what the ages were. They're randomly divided into 3 groups. So now we understand this is what a proper method section in reprotox would look like. Okay, at least I know what I'm dealing with, right? And now that they've done it on 30, you might want to do it on another 100 or 2 to replicate this.
Right.
So each vaccine group received 2 doses on day 0 and day 28, human equivalent doses.
Oh, wow. And these tiny creatures.
Human equivalent. No, that means human equivalent,
sorry.
meaning how many micrograms per kilogram body weight. So it would have been human equivalent.
The ratio. Okay,
right?
Got it.
So this is really bad.
Okay.
So now we also know what they did. They did immunohistochemical analysis. Okay, that's fine. They're taking slides and they're staining them, and you're looking at tissues. They're looking for transforming growth factor beta, very important in the overall reproductive cycle, vascular endothelial growth factor, VEGF, and most importantly, the anti-Mullerian hormone, AMH. This is a very, very strongly correlated hormone with whether or not you're fertile, whether you have egg production, or how close to menopause you might be. They just measure your AMH levels, right?
Okay.
Not perfect, but it's got a very tight correlation. So they found out, conversely, AMH expression in the granulosa cells of primary, secondary antral follicles showed marked reductions, P of less than 0.001. Okay. And they found this is bad.
Okay.
This is very, very bad.
Counts of primordial, primary, and secondary follicles decreased significantly in the inactivated vaccine group relative to controls, and further in the mRNA vaccine group compared to the inactivated group. And it goes on.
yeah, it goes on. Point is, yuck, terrible animal studies. Yeah. How was it that Moderna has nothing to report, but these people reported all kinds of highly significant findings? I'm calling bullshit on this.
Yeah,
okay?
I think you should call bullshit. This is wrong. It's just straight up wrong. Like we don't need to be doing this.
Oh no, we found nothing. We didn't find nothing. So the animal studies are bad, okay? The human studies aren't any better. So Nicholas Holscher here reporting out this.
New study, mass mRNA injection campaigns likely fueling the global fertility collapse among about 100.3 million Czech.
1.3.
Sorry, 1.3 million Czech women aged 18 to 39. Those vaccinated against COVID-19 had about 33% fewer successful pregnancies compared to the unvaccinated women.
That is such an astonishing finding.
Horrifying
so the animal
number.
Studies say that your AMH levels go down, your follicles are reduced by 60%. That would say it's not impossible to get pregnant. It's going to be harder. That's what this data says.
Oh my God. And you know, it sucks.
In animals, it's in humans, and Moderna's like, we didn't find anything. And an animal study of an unknown number of rats where we conducted fertility studies that we forgot to tell you what they were. How is that even remotely how our regulatory bodies work? Oh, this is a good paragraph. They didn't find anything. I guess we're good. Are we good?
Because they're pointless. People that are in these positions are just irrelevant. Human beings.
Really dumb.
But what's really sad about this, Chris, is that if you look at that, it seems like, yeah, it's just a headline. Here we are. Like, yeah, so the COVID-19 shot's bad, blah, blah, blah. 33% fewer successful pregnancies means all sorts of things. It means miscarriages, stillbirths, painful situations for people to go through. Like when you bring it back to the human level, this isn't just, data. These are people's lives that are destroyed.
I know.
Like, these are people who normally might have been able to have families that can't.
Yep.
This is terrible. It's really messed up. And I think it looks to me like they want this to happen, because I can't imagine any other way that they could be ignoring all the signs, all the data that's screaming at us to say, don't do this?
Well, either you're ignoring it or it's what Ben Trucker says here.
He says deliberate population reduction. Yes.
Could be.
I like this one too. The next.
Oh, wait.
Where'd
this
it
one.
go?
This one.
Oh,
Joe
Chris,
Schmo.
you're just fear mongering. The worst that can happen is a species-wide genetic bottleneck.
Yeah, just fear. That's the worst that could happen.
And there's one up there that says the next injection I'll allow is embalming fluid because I won't be able to object. I like that.
Good one, Reformed Goldbug. Why are you reformed? Goldbugs, I thought were permanent. So,
Okay.
But you're to your point. We have all these so-called experts who are supposed to be looking at this stuff. Instead, I read about this stuff because Nicholas Holscher there, he's got his master's in public health. I read about this because we've got Robert Malone out there, because we still have Pierre Corey out there, because we still have Peter McCullough out there, because we still have Ryan Cole out there, because we have Kat Lindley, because we have a few doctors, like a handful. I can probably name all of them who care about this stuff, right? Jessica Rose. Sorry if I know I'm missing people, but there's a handful.
There's like 20 people.
Yeah. And they're just chewing through the data going, what do we do here? Right.
And that's not their job. That's something they're doing on the side because they care about people.
They do it on a shoestring with almost no money, right? And meanwhile, we have these multi-billion-dollar agencies that are like just shrugging and going, well, I guess we're good. They did a study. I guess we're good. No impact. The study revealed no effects of evidence on female fertility. No effects.
I'm curious if people in the chat are listening to this, if they have had any experiences directly with this happening. If they've noticed in their own family systems, because we read the comments afterward. I'm just curious how many people have experienced some of these things personally or know somebody that has been struggling with infertility and such since receiving vaccines like this.
Yeah, let us know. Oh, by the way, so Evie, speaking of all those experts and the doctors, a lot of bafflement. They're baffled. This just came out today on June 3rd.
The New York Post? Are you serious?
Yeah, they're just like, why?
Why so many people? Why so many people are having strokes in their 20s, 30s, and 40s? We've never had patients so young.
I predict more bafflement on the way if we get more of this Moderna vax out there. It's baffling. It's just baffling. Baffling, of course. This came out in May. This report.
People's heart health in the UK declining rapidly in a worrying trend.
Yeah,
report.
Baffling. It's just a worrying trend. It's a worrying trend.
Oh, look at that.
Here we've had, we don't know. They're just shrugging. They're like, so many patients in their 20s, 30s, and 40s with strokes.
What could it be?
When you talk about life-altering, career-damaging, family-damaging, life-damaging.
Yeah, you don't recover a lot of times from those.
You can hear them shrugging through the words. They're just like, oh, we've never, what are you going to do?
That's awful.
It's just baffling.
It's awful.
How about this?
Australia. Yeah, from Yahoo News. Australia records the highest rates of aggressive cancer in the world. We don't know why. We're just baffled. We don't know why. In Australia.
And we have no ideas. But we're sure it's not that one thing.
Exactly. Bowel cancer rates are increasing among younger adults, with researchers unsure what's behind the deadly trend.
Yep, those researchers.
Wow.
Just
what could it be?
What could it be?
So weird.
So many baffling mysteries, though. Evie, remember this one from 2021? So they just started vaccinating the crap out of everybody, and then we had these. They're like,
Experts puzzled by why Haiti has one of the lowest COVID-19 death rates in the world, despite administering 0 vaccine doses. We don't know why.
We don't know. Despite administering 0 vaccine doses, what? Why? How could it be that? What? Why
is this real? Like, is that a joke headline?
No, experts.
This is from 2021 too.
I know they're puzzled, but why did Haiti have the lowest COVID-19 death rates? Right now, and all the time, Evie, I see this now. People like I got in this argument probably with some pharma bots under a
are you battling Wall Street bots Journal again?
Article. I would commented whatever, but there was the bots were in there, or this deluded person who'd been deluded by the bots, and saying 1.2 million Americans with COVID on their death certificates argue with you. I'm like, well, can we explain why like there's almost no COVID on Haiti? You know, with its amazing first world medical system. Why Haiti? Could it be they just didn't give themselves shots? And of course, they had high vitamin D levels living where they do.
That's unbelievable.
Could it have been that? Could it have been that?
Perhaps.
Could it have been that? Oh, how about this? More baffling. It's just baffling.
No.
We're all baffled.
We're all baffled. Doctors sound alarm over massive spike in Americans suddenly dropping dead from unexplained heart attacks.
Yep.
Nobody knows why.
It's just such a mystery.
Unbelievable.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It is unbelievable. By the way, but I said we're going to close on some good news for this section because it's changing. This is fascinating. Marianne Damasi, we met her at the last Brownstone event. She flew all the way up from Australia, which is where she writes out. I love the work she does.
She says, it didn't come with a press conference or a media blitz. In fact, there was no announcement at all. But sometime around the 2nd of May, 2025, the Australian government quietly removed its recommendation for COVID-19 vaccination in healthy children and adolescents under 18.
Ooh,
that's a big
Australia
deal.
was so brutal in forcing the jab on everybody.
Oh yeah, they were
the TGA. And
speaking of Nazis, they were really
they were
bad.
Terrible. They were amongst the worst. And so all of a sudden they just quietly do. So I had to go to the website, and sure enough, last updated on the 2nd of May.
There it is. Healthy infants, children, and adolescents aged less than 18 years are not recommended to receive
not
COVID-19
recommended. They didn't just remove the recommendation like our HHS did. Remember Kennedy and those other two cats got up there, and Bhattacharya and I think Makari, they said, oh yeah, well, we're not recommending it but you can still get it. This is different. They're not recommending it.
Please don't.
Yeah, not recommending it. And by the way, ILC17, who's there, he did a great job pulling this up too. But take a look at that. Look at that part. Look at that part in red.
Yeah, it says, COVID-19 vaccine is not recommended for healthy infants, children, or adolescents who do not have medical conditions that increase their risk of severe illness. This is because the risk of severe illness was extremely low in this cohort over the course of the pandemic.
Did they just notice that? Finally?
And benefits of vaccination are not considered to outweigh the potential harms.
Oh,
there it is.
There it is. In black and white. They just quietly updated it.
You said that years ago.
Years ago.
Yeah,
no,
we've all known this for so long.
If the disease has basically, they're like, oh yeah, the risk of severe illness was extremely low in this cohort. Duh, right? Kids basically were unaffected by this, 100%, practically, except for the few who had very serious other underlying conditions anyway, right?
Wow.
But for everybody else, this should have been the simplest cost benefit ever. Oh, are you a healthy child who's not morbidly obese or has diabetes or something really wackadoodle?
Right.
You're not getting it.
Right. Exactly.
That would have been fine. But they said now, look, they just slid that. How do you just slide that out and not warn everybody and do the biggest public health campaign ever? You had billions to try and get everybody to take the vaccine.
They
should be screaming. They're slinking away. They should be saying the benefits of the vaccine are not considered to outweigh the potential harms.
Unbelievable. And just like that, Australia's TGA admits potential harms outweigh the benefits of COVID vaccines to children under 18 and infants 5 years after countless children and infants have been injected and harmed.
So I have questions about how these administrators get to walk to their cars late at night in parking lots without baseball bats being somehow involved. I don't understand. I mean, this is so
How do these people still have their jobs?
At a minimum, I don't understand that. But this is criminal. I think this is assault. Speaking of which, we're going to get to that.
Nuremberg type,
So I show this one all the time, by the way. Vaccines absolutely cause sudden infant death syndrome. And this data this came out in the Miller paper in 2011. Here they're analyzing 2009 infant mortality rates and comparing it against the number of vaccine doses for over 30 nations. So every nation has its own policy, right? Some put more jabs in, some put fewer. And so you plot the whole thing. You plot the whole thing out. Each one of these dots is a country. So this country might have had very low infant mortality of only, say, 2.3 or something per 1,000, but they gave 17 shots, I would say. And here's a country that gives 26 shots, but they had a really bad infant mortality rate. And so if giving more vaccine doses, which is across going out to the right on the x-axis, was beneficial, you would see infant deaths, the line would slope this way. It it would slope down from
Right.
left to right.
The more you get, the better you are.
So that's why I say the line, it slopes the wrong way. And so we've had this. So we've known about this, Evie, for a very long time, that the more shots you give, the more sudden infant death syndrome you get.
Right.
And it's across 30 nations. So it's a giant, robust data set,
Right.
which is why we see the p-value is less than 0.0001. The smaller that number, the more highly significant this is. This is a highly, highly significant finding.
It is. And
Highly significant.
And this has been out since 2009?
2011.
Oh,
is when the paper
2011.
got published.
Wow. So we've had this data for quite a while.
Yeah. So given
Oof.
that we know that, this is from the Saunders Comprehensive Review for the NCLX-RN nurse examination, one of the top revision books for a nursing exam in the United States and Canada. What does that say right there, Evie, under point 3?
Number 3 says, if there is suspicion that the parent will not bring the child to the pediatrician or healthcare clinic for follow-up immunizations according to the optimal immunization schedule, any of the recommended vaccines can be administered simultaneously. Holy moly.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I almost
Can you
swore.
believe that? So my only question is this, is this
Wow.
merely evil or is it merely criminal assault? Because we have the data. We know this. Like, how do you look at this data? How does somebody in the medical, how does a nurse practicing, because nurses are more than capable of reading a chart like anybody. How do you, as a nurse, look at that chart and then read this in this book and go, how am I not committing some, like, the first rule of medicine is to not harm your patients. I consider babies dying in their cribs pretty harmful. I don't understand this. This is the world we live in. It's that broken.
Wow.
That broken.
Wow. And you know, they really do penalize you. Like in some cases, as we've seen, they will try to take your child if you don't do this. And then in other situations, like you won't be allowed to go to school, right? If you don't have, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's so hard to stand up to them. It's so hard because they, you know, when you're in, like if you go to the hospital for a birth and you're in that, you know, you're in labor or whatever, or you've just had a C-section, you're in a very vulnerable spot. There's something very evil to take advantage of vulnerable people. That takes like a special kind of ugly, nasty.
It does. So I've heard from a lot of people now who say that sometimes they'll try and separate you from your child at the doctor's office or your infant. And they're like, right? And they try and pretend like they have some authority. Oh no, we have to take your child into this other room for an event. Well, I'm coming. Right?
That's right.
Oh no, our rules forbid that. You're like, well, your rules.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Like they'll try to take your baby because they go to wash it. They give it baths, and that's generally when they do a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't fall for it. I'm really amazed at, there are more people now who are standing up and saying no.
Yeah.
And I'm really, that gives me courage.
Well, Joel's reading the vibe of where we're heading with today's presentation. So hang on to your hat, Joel, who said, good thing we don't have social credit scores yet.
Yeah, right.
Yet.
I'm just opting out. I don't want anything. I'll be out in the field getting dirty. Thank you.
All right. So at this point, though, remember, so Evie, I was hosting a webinar for the IMA a few weeks ago, and Ron Johnson was on there. He was there for the whole hour, Senator Johnson.
Tell people what the IMA is in case they don't know.
The Independent Medical Alliance, which is formerly the FLCCC. So those are all the doctors who bravely stood up and then lost their jobs.
Right.
And I've just been helping them at a board level for a while just to do what they do because it's so important. Anyway, we had a webinar.
Yep.
I was asked to host. Ron Johnson was on there for the whole hour, and somebody said, hey, how come we can't get rid of these mRNA vaccines? And he said, look, it's tough. I get it. He said, but everybody has had a chance now to learn about these things. So he didn't put it this way. I'll put it this way. He said, paraphrasing, kind of an IQ test at this point. You know, if people want to go and get them, free country, what do you do?
Darwin.
Right?
Yeah.
So on that front, I found this just came out May 29th, the Rasmussen reports, they do good polling.
Interesting.
So the question there.
Apparently there's a huge difference between party affiliations on vaccine booster uptake with all adults, or I'll just do the part highlighted.
Well, what the question is?
Have you taken a COVID-19 vaccine or booster in the last 12 months? And 50% of Democrats said yes. 50%. Only 26% of independents said yes. And Republicans, only 29% said yes.
That's a huge difference.
That is a major difference.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. So,
And it's interesting, more men than women, which is surprising to me.
it is. That's surprising to me too. But women have had were amongst the first to get shut down by, say, Facebook for saying, "Hey, has anybody else noticed there I've this huge dysregulation in my period cycle?
Oh,
My
yeah.
menstrual cycle is completely upended by this." So the
Totally
vibe went
whacked.
out across women pretty hard, which was like, "Ooh, this thing is really messing with our bodies.
Yeah.
It's no good." Right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yep.
Wow. And that's Rasmussen. That's a big deal.
It is. It is. So this is 50%, 26, 29. All of them. These are Americans. Americans are completely bafflingly stupid still compared to, I would say, the NHS employees over there in UK.
And the latest demographic to doubt their efficacy are doctors and nurses.
Yeah, who'd have thought it? So the NHS has a vaccine problem. Staff don't want the jab. So doctors, nurses, and other frontline NHS staff are shunning the flu vaccine. So this is the flu vaccine, not the coronavirus vaccine, in ever greater numbers, with almost 9 in 10 staff at one of England's largest hospital trusts unvaccinated last winter. Oh, I wonder what changed in the last 5 years to make people suspicious of vaccines.
Yeah. It's called, they're acknowledging as much as vaccine fatigue.
Yeah.
We're just a bit tired of vaccines. We don't believe it was all a load of propaganda and nonsense and statist reruns of the possible home arrest.
We've got long vaccine.
Even relative normies like myself who did have a COVID jab, much to Nick Dixon's disgust.
Yeah.
Have become very suspicious, because when they mandate stuff, when they say, if you don't do this, you will be in trouble, you start to ask why. Up till that point, vaccines were given to us at school. If someone said you had a vaccine to go on holiday, I just went along with it.
I think this is the flu jab that they're worried about specifically. Yes. Now, the flu jab, my wife organised the flu.
Anyway, 9 in 10. Not getting the flu jab, but it's all because they overplayed their hand with the corona jabs, right? I will admit, before COVID, I was pretty neutral on vaccines, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't really like a big proponent, but not against. I was just like, you get them. And if they said, oh, you have to get one before you go to Africa for yellow fever, I would have just rolled up my arm sleeve, right? But
I was too, actually.
Now I'm like, because now I know. I was actually ignorant back then, right? Now that I've read Turtles All the Way Down and looked at the actual data, seen those horrifying charts, and just like, it's just so transparently obvious.
It is. We have definitely seen that in the last 5 years or so. I think, the veil has been lifted somewhat in that regard. And I think you're absolutely right. By pushing those vaccines, they actually damaged people's, I think, decision making, and they're deciding that they ever want to have any more of these ever again.
Yep.
I think they got a little bit too greedy.
Yeah. Well, here's an N of one anecdote.
Shauna says, I work with 2 young doctors who took the vax and ended up with AFib and 2 ablations. 2 because they took the booster, even though I told them not to.
Yeah, atrial fibrillations. You have to do this thing called an ablation, where they literally take a small chunk of your heart.
Amazing.
Take it off.
That's awful.
All right. I want to talk about this very quickly. We're going to shift gears.
All right.
So these were the shipping containers that Ukraine somehow got into Russia, and each one of those is a little drone packed with explosives.
And these are the actual ones?
These are the actual shipping containers. Wow. They had all of these. They then got picked up and put on trucks. They were packed with drones that looked like this, with little explosives on them. And then this is what they looked like in operation. You can see the smoke in the background. And off it goes, and it's flying off to a nearby Russian airbase. And once these drones took off and went to the nearby airbase, they blew up lots and lots of planes. Lots.
Did they do it one at a time like that, or did they all like?
No, there were some of them you could see them come out 1, 2, 3, 4. They were off and out. But this is an actual video feed that says fail safe, and it's got all this like basically heads up display kind of stuff.
Mhm.
You can see it has all kinds of things on the display. It's telling you how fast it's traveling, right? Ground speed is 3.6.
Oh, this is from the drone's
From the
perspective.
drones. So the Ukrainians who were piloting these things remotely, which raises all sorts of questions, were recording that. And so here you can see that it had a ground speed of 3.6 meters per second. You see a height, you see the time. You've got this sort of like heads up level display.
It's like a video game. It's
Sure.
just a video game.
So they flow around, and there's I didn't record this whole thing to play here today, but they fly these things around, and you can see them flying, and then they pick a plane and down it goes. And so they just picked off plane after plane after plane. It raises very serious questions about nuclear readiness and deterrence, and this obviously is going to make things more scary, not less. But even beyond what it means to the Ukraine-Russian war, we have another issue here, which is that it now shows very conclusively there's no way to defend against this at this point, right? It's very difficult.
I don't know how you would.
If somebody can take a 50 by 100 foot building and create 6 shipping containers of wanton destructive power, and then these things could be boxed up, and maybe they go outside a military base to blow up very expensive military jets, but maybe they go outside of
what if they mail them?
Electrical substations, right?
What if they mail them?
What do you mean? That's called a mail bomb. What do you mean?
I know, but they could put like a drone in a box that you open, you think it's from Amazon, and it just the minute you open it, the thing activates and boom.
That'd be a mail bomb.
That could be, okay, fine. That just is scary to me.
All right.
These are scary.
Nobody uses the mail anymore, so I was confused.
All right, fine.
But the point is, you could take these things and you could park them anywhere and create all kinds of damage to infrastructure. Okay.
Yeah, you could.
So this is an up leveling of the game, and maybe I'm not going to say I'm blaming the Ukrainians for opening this Pandora's box. It was coming anyway, but now it's here. I think we have to talk about that because it's about to change everything in the story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, what would you do, Evie, if first you had this unregulated growth of like drones and AI technology, and you're just like, oh, it's so good, we're going to build 50 gigawatts of these AI plants, and the next thing you know, you see that people are capable of doing this. What's your next move?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I would want to just call it a truce, like peace, like we're all done. Can we just get to that part of the story where we
no,
sign some kind of agreement? But
no, that's because you're human and you're normal.
Oh,
if you're an absolute pathological nightmare of a human being, what you do is you say, you know what we're going to need? We're going to have to compile data on every human livestock in the system.
What?
So Palantir is a Silicon Valley bro, psychopathic, nasty, soulless organization that works with militaries they've been working with Israel to help them just blow up more buildings. They use AI to sort of target people now.
Oh my
So Palantir is at the head of that. It's an In-Q-Tel, which is a CIA cutout, very loose, not even a cutout. Everybody knows In-Q-Tel is CIA money. It's military money to create databases that can be used in situations to create total battlefield information control, and they're extending it now to the human livestock of America.
And that's the response to what just happened.
I don't know. I'm just connecting it. Maybe this, begins to explain this. But this to me is a very predictable response to something like that. It's like, no, we're not going to do what you suggested, which is let's dial back the risk. Let's take these technologies out of the hands of everybody, ourselves included.
Yeah.
Militaries should not be using this anymore. We forbid it. Right? It's a terrible idea.
It is. There are laws like that. International laws that you could make.
These were big ones because they had to go take out planes. But imagine if this is just a room of suitcases and you open up the suitcase and there's hundreds of these little tiny drones in there.
Right.
They have the facial recognition technology, so they're built in, and they each have a different face they're set to look at. And you open up this swarm,
and they're looking for you
outside of a gathering of world leaders or whatever.
Oh my gosh, we could never do anything again.
Nope, you would never be able to go outside again. So I think that's what's happening here.
What was that movie where that happened? The Golden Compass, where they had that like weird wind up insect.
Oh yeah, the little insecty things. I forget what those are called.
Yeah. There's so many movies that have had things like this, obviously, or shows.
But what even is this now? What is this?
I don't know, but I'm not interested in participating. I guess they already
okay, it's New York Times, so maybe they're getting hyperbolic because they hate all things Trump, and maybe they're trying to spin it bad. I get that. But,
okay.
But they say, the Trump administration, they say it's expanded Palantir's work with the government, spreading the company's technology, which could easily merge data on Americans throughout agencies. Oh, you think that's what they do, right? So what do we got here?
The New York Times says, in March, President Trump signed an executive order calling for the federal government to share data across agencies, raising questions over whether he might compile a master list of personal information on Americans that could give him untold surveillance power.
Okay, hold up. Because whether Trump does that or it's the next person, it's like, here's the thing. It's like, oh no, this will be terrible if Trump does this, and there are going to be people who are okay with it because Trump is doing it. Some people are not going to be okay. And then the whole thing will flip and you'll get another Biden in. And then exactly opposite.
Right.
Some people will be okay with it and some people won't be okay with it.
It's
but
true.
The point is that it's not okay. It doesn't matter who's doing it.
That's right.
And it's irrelevant that Trump is the guy kicking it off because the next dude or dudette is going to use it.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. Then it's fair game for anybody.
It's like, does anybody talk about Herbert Hoover in unleashing the IRS on us anymore? No. Oh, it's only a 1% tax on the richest.
We've all forgotten about it, and we don't even know the history of it anymore.
Oh, we're just trying to save. We're just going to merge databases. It's more efficient. Next thing you know, they press the button and you can't buy a loaf of bread, because your money's been shut off. Right.
Carrying on, Mr. Trump has not publicly talked about the effort since, but behind the scenes, officials have quietly put technological building blocks into place to enable his plan. In particular, they have turned to one company, Palantir, the data analysis and technology firm.
Yeah, that undersells it. The data analysis and tech firm. Yeah, that's who they are.
Yeah,
that's who they are. Peachy Keen.
Representatives of Palantir are also speaking to at least two other agencies, the Social Security Administration and the Internal Revenue Service, about buying its technology, according to 6 government officials and Palantir employees with knowledge of the discussions.
You know what? We're all going to...
Wow, this is going to be great.
So I was on Twitter and Chi Girl said that her car got damaged somehow, but so she had this rental they gave her and she hated it. Because it was like a new car. She's like, oh, good, I get to drive a 2025 car around. Right. And she said it would grab your wheel if you tried to change lanes without signaling.
Yeah.
And then it was tracking her, and there were these little warnings and nudges all the time. You're speeding, and it was like it was just like constantly communicating, and it's like.
And then that goes to your insurance agent.
Yeah,
and that makes your rates higher. Like this just goes on and on and on. It doesn't end.
The whole thing. Right.
Wow.
So what could go wrong with the Internal Revenue Service having Palantir?
Unbelievable.
We've checked your phone records and it looks like you attended a tag sale, and we didn't notice that you recorded any taxable events there. Right?
Yeah.
No, it's coming.
And worse.
This is command and control. Yeah.
Oh, it is. But what just happened with the vaccines, to bring that back in, what you were just talking about, they're going to have all of those records on all of us digitally. And then those follow us around. And then that becomes a thing that people can easily, with this technology that you're talking about, can identify you and target you and exclude you or whatever it may be.
Yep.
I mean, it was bad enough during COVID, but with paper, your show us your papers kind of crap. Yep. This is not good.
Hey, George. It's good to see you here, George.
Oh, George, hey. He says, Trump folded on his promise of a balanced budget, anti-war in American security and freedom. There's clearly a unitary. It's undeniable.
A uniparty.
A uniparty.
Yeah, it's one thing. It's one thing.
Yeah.
And thank you for the super chat, Brendan. Much appreciated.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All good. Okay, so
thanks for your support.
So let's carry on here. Maybe that begins to explain this too.
So NATO, I guess, inks a deal with Palantir for Maven AI system.
So they have they have two systems. They've got this Maven, they got this other one. This other one is being brought in to spy on Americans, but NATO
wants one. So NATO said the contract was, quote, one of the most expeditious in its history, taking only 6 months from outlining the requirement to acquiring the system.
So this is in April. NATO obviously knows that all this stuff is being planned with these drones, right? Because they're in on it, right?
Right.
They're granularly invested in everything Ukraine does. There's not a chance in the world Ukraine spent a year and a half planning that audacious move.
Oh yeah, no.
And somehow NATO didn't know about
Lindsey
that.
Graham was over there right before that happened,
and all that stuff.
There's
right?
also in Blumenthal. There's a whole bunch of gross.
So I think we're starting to see that NATO, so the West, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, are all going to be invested in this idea that, you know what we have to do? We are going to have to lock our citizens down. We're going to have to know everything. We're going to have to make sure that there isn't an unauthorized truck moving somewhere. And it'll all be breathlessly explained as like, this is for our safety, right?
Like air traffic control, but for cars.
Exactly. Exactly.
Be
Because
so
we
weird.
can't risk this dangerous thing we've unleashed actually being used against us, right? So this guy is a far left lunatic, though. This is Alex Karp. He is the CEO of Palantir, right?
Okay.
So down in the blue down there,
Sure.
he said he claimed that Palantir's software.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that.
Says Karp, the son of a Jewish father and black mother, claimed that Palantir's software short-circuited the rise of European political parties, energized by the Great Replacement migration of illegal aliens
In their subsequent
subsequent terror attacks.
Yeah. He's out bragging. He's like, oh, our software helped short circuit the alt-right movement in Germany, for instance, right? Which is the most popular political movement, right? It has the most votes.
Right. That was terrible what happened there.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, but they use this software to help undermine them and this and that and all that. He's very proud of that. So here's the thing. If any of this was on the up and up, Trump knows that he understands Trump derangement syndrome. He calls out the loony left on this stuff all the time.
Yeah, he does.
But then he invites this guy to come inside and start running like basically centralized databases on all Americans. Like, how is that not the worst, stupidest idea you've ever heard? And by the way, they have a mass murderer on the board, Deborah Birx. She is awful.
Is she not good?
The scarf lady. She's the lady who gave us all the COVID and the COVID shots under Trump 1.0. So she's on the board. So the scarf lady, former White House coronavirus task force and ambassador at large for this stuff.
Ugh.
Like, but she's on the board. Like, really?
Great.
It's just, look, it's a big club.
And you're not in it.
Right. And so Newsweek found obviously some people to sort of say, we're not happy with this. And by the way, I follow Jason Bassler of the Free Thought Project right there. But yeah.
So what do we want to share here?
Right. Just start with his quote there. No.
Okay. Jason says, no, this Palantir database isn't like the others. It will combine tax filings, student debt, social security, bank accounts, medical claims, and immigration status. No previous database system has ever centralized this much personal info across various federal agencies. Other ex-users compared the reported plan to the Chinese social credit system, with one writing, this database will be weaponized against us all once the social credit system is in place, and you can and will become a target if you dare to dissent, just like how China runs their society.
Okay, that's true. I absolutely 100% agree that this thing is going to be this master database. It's going to be weaponized because everything the government ever does ends up being weaponized against its own people.
Right.
We're the enemy. They have to control us. You have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. It's public health. You don't understand. If your child dies of myocarditis, think of the greater good, even though they never settle down and go, oh yeah, no kids actually were going to die from COVID in the first place. So it's stupid. Doesn't matter. Right. The difference is, you know what? Sad. I would actually, if you said, well, it'll be just like the Chinese social credit system, it won't, because China actually does things for its own people.
It cares about its citizens.
It builds beautiful infrastructure. You might disagree with how it goes about it, but at the end of the day, you have a fairly clean, very safe sort of high-tech environment to live into. They're cleaning up their act. They have some pretty bad air pollution, but they're getting there, right? So they're doing things with their resources that benefit the people. I'm a tax donkey, and all of my money gets funneled up to a few billionaires who offshore it and hide it away and then buy mega yachts and go to Epstein Island.
And then make rules that make your life hellacious.
Just how I see it. So anyway, that's what's coming. And
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I also want to talk very quickly about how the UK, I told you I'd get here, is nearing the end. So this is Keir Starmer, who I have a very visceral sort of a dislike to, cats and dogs. I just, when he speaks, so I have to dial that back. I don't like, he strikes me as highly insincere and just like he'll say, it doesn't even matter. Like he's a pompous windbag. He'll say whatever he needs to say in that moment.
Yeah.
Because that's the right thing to say in that moment for his own political ambitions. I think he's untethered to any sense of past or present or future, or the people he allegedly is supposed to be caring over. Public service is Keir service.
I haven't really heard him before.
In the national interest. And that's why we are moving to warfighting readiness as the central purpose of our armed forces.
We're moving to warfighting readiness.
When we are being directly threatened by states with advanced military forces.
What? Nobody's being directly threatened.
He meant to say Russia, but he had to say states with advanced military forces. Directly threatened. They've never been directly threatened.
No, they haven't.
Right? In fact, right after this speech, Medvedev came out and said, I'm paraphrasing slightly, he said, we have no interest in your stupid country.
Who was that?
The Russian president.
Oh, the Russian president.
Medvedev. He came out and he said, no, hey, dude, we have no interest in your, like, trust me, wouldn't be worth the effort. We don't care.
Right.
Most effective way to deter them is to be ready. And frankly, to show them that we're ready. To deliver peace through strength. I can announce today that we're going to build at least 6 new munitions factories in the United Kingdom, generating over 1,000 jobs.
By the way, it sounds good, but 1,000 jobs making munitions, which you make them and then you blow them up, is not the same as 1,000 jobs
that are good for a long time.
Rebuilding like bridges, or which has a long-term durable impact on your economy, or making sure that your fields are regeneratively, rebuilding soil, or any of this stuff, right?
It's just a waste. It's a waste of the resources again.
Total waste.
It's like blowing up oil.
Total waste. And by the way, I think the same day he gave this speech, like 1,000 fresh refugees poured across from France in little boats.
Of course they did. Of course.
And you want to talk about like the UK is not facing an existential threat currently from Russia. It is facing an existential threat from having its culture completely overwhelmed. Their whole, you and I looked at it a while ago on one of these shows where out of the top 20 cities in the UK, I think a majority of them, whites are the minority.
Right.
Immigrants are now the majority. Right. And he's talking about, what we need? We need 6 new munitions factories. It goes way beyond that. He's also talking about building, I think 15 new submarines, nuclear submarines.
What? British PM Starmer. We are moving to warfighting readiness in the face of threat of war from Russia. We'll build 6 munitions factories and thousands of long-range missiles, integrate drones into naval operations, and build new submarine every 18 months, which turns out to be, I guess, about $20.3 billion.
Yeah. And by the way, this is BAE Systems, their weapons manufacturing company, conglomerate there. And, and these, I presume, are people who are at least invested in at least their jobs. You would think it's a friendly crowd. I listened to the whole thing, and at the end, it was like,
were people like, what is happening?
I don't think he's very popular. Just saying.
Yeah.
All right. And then we close up today with this.
Still no.
Where's my audit, yo? Come on. Where's my audit of Fort Knox Gold? Come on. All right. We do not like the fact that we're in the middle of the Gulf of no one has been arrested yet. That's no good. Exclusive. Look at this. Oh no. Watchdog finds out Biden's auto pen review finds that criminal evidence of impersonating the president. They found criminal evidence. Dude, how has nobody been charged with anything yet of any consequence? None. Zero. It's getting embarrassing at this point in time. I think we're past embarrassing. I think we have to just admit it's not going to happen. Just ain't going to happen. And so we're rapidly approaching this.
The Gulf of
Dan Bongino, they're jumping to Boulder, Colorado, because there was one thing where a few people were injured, and suddenly this is like the biggest top priority, and they flew out there, personnel on the scene. We went out there, act of terror. I'm not saying it isn't a big thing that happened, but it's hardly the most important thing by far. And he says, but to be clear, moving forward, when evidence is passed to our FBI leadership team, right, then we investigate, right?
Yeah.
Wow. We will investigate when evidence is passed to our, how about this? Remember this? Scott Adams said this.
He said the FBI robbed a bank and it's being covered as a process story. Literally, they robbed a bank. I mean, actually, really, no kidding, robbed a bank. And I guess what had happened is FBI agents drilled and pried their way into 1,400 safe deposit boxes. 18 months later, newly unsealed court documents show that the FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office in L.A. got their warrant for that raid by misleading the judge who approved it.
What? Here's some evidence. Here, it's a bank robbery. And if you say, well, it wasn't technically a bank, it was private, those were private. It was a private vaulting company. And then it was an armed robbery, because I'm pretty sure they were armed. Okay. So I had to dig down, you know me. And so I found out that Rob Johnson's been covering this, and it turns out the FBI did all that pursuant to a warrant, but critically, the warrant specifically said it did not authorize a criminal search or seizure of the safety deposits. It says it right down here. This warrant does not authorize a criminal search of or seizure of the contents of the safety deposit boxes. No, not yours. But the FBI is clever. They're clever. Wow. They're clever people. So they're like, we can't.
What can we do?
If we can't get into those, a criminal search, I know what we'll do. We'll call it a civil forfeiture process.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So just read this part in yellow right
there.
In
March 2021, the FBI raided USPV, broke open every single box in the vault and looked through all the contents. The FBI ran all cash in the vault by drug dogs, opened envelopes, and photographed the contents, and ultimately sent everything worth over $5,000 to asset forfeiture, initiating proceedings to keep that property forever.
It was just such a nightmare.
Wow.
These are just people,
I can't believe how people are behaving. I'm just shocked.
I mean, it's just a criminal operation, right? Full on criminal operation. Civil asset forfeiture has to be like the stupidest, worst thing ever. Every judge involved in that. Like, this is when you lose respect for your institutions. Like,
here we are at the fourth turning again.
Law enforcement ought to be saying, no, this is wrong. We should not be doing this. But civil asset forfeiture, well, it's like, well, we get to, take the money, and then they get to, it's not like it gets turned over for public use. Those things often, when it's civil asset forfeiture results in something being seized, it goes to the law enforcement agency that seized it. They keep it.
So they have an incentive.
They have an incentive. Do this. You show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. Whoever thought it would be a good idea to incentivize law enforcement to seize money civilly was a complete effing moron. And now it's led to enormous amount. More people lost money to civil asset forfeiture in 2022 than to robberies.
Really?
Yeah. Because it's easier to rob people when you have a gun and a judge, right?
Wow.
So that's what this case was. I mean, it's just the most astonishingly terrible case. But Dan,
that's awful.
Dan, I have clear evidence of an armed robbery conducted by the FBI. You gonna investigate? Because you said you will. I hope you do.
Yeah.
Be real nice. That's what happened. All right. Evie.
Okay.
We are at the end of our signal hour, so please land this plane for us, would you?
I will. This poem I'm going to read, called "Life is a Journey." I chose it because I feel like we each are gifted these precious moments of life, and although it's wonderful to be aware of all the things happening out there in the big wide world, what it comes down to is that we're each here for a very specific reason and purpose. At least that's what I believe. Everyone is free to share or feel any way they want about it. But personally, I like to remind myself that this life is a precious journey, and that I need to keep my eyes and my heart open for whatever it is I'm supposed to be doing while I'm here. It says, birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or from strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from grief to understanding, from fear to faith, From defeat to defeat, until not looking backwards or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high point along the way, but in having made the journey, step by step, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey. It's by Rabbi Alvin Fine.
Well, thank you for that, Evie, and thank you everyone for being here. And by the way, if you ever want to meet Evie and I in person, we have our summit at Peak Prosperity has an annual summit. It's in Lake Winnipesaukee. It'll be September 12th, 13th, 14th this year. We'll both be there. We're very available. We just hang out with a few hundred of our best friends. It sells out every year, but if you want to see more about that, go to peakprosperity.com. There'll be a banner up there. Click that. There's a whole form there to fill out.
Yeah, come and join us. It would be. It's really an amazing experience.
Oh, it's so good. I'm looking forward to it already. So we would love to see you there for that. Until then, adios, amigos. Thank you for being here today. And a lot left on the cutting room floor. So if you want to see what that is, come by Peak Prosperity. I put all the rest of this up for the Peak Tribe over there. So with that, thanks very much for being here today.
Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon, too.